Welcome to the Alpha Male 2.0 podcast. I am Caleb Jones. Here we talk about freedom-focused lifestyle design for men, location-independent income through your own location-independent business, mobility, outcome independence, dating multiple women with no cheating and no drama, the freest lifestyle a man can possibly live in the modern era. And this is the first Alpha Male 2.0 podcasts, or of those podcasts, of the new model I'm using for social media, where I no longer care about any algorithms or anything like that. So you are going to get this podcast raw with no edits. So if you're listening to this, there will be no edits. If I make mistakes, you're going to hear my mistakes. If there's awkward pauses, you hear my awkward pauses. If I go off on a tangent, you hear that. If you're watching the video, you are seeing lower quality video with no edits whatsoever. Higher quality audio, I have upgraded my audio, because audio is pretty important. So upgraded audio, much better audio, but lower quality video, no edits, nothing like that. And so I already talked about why I did this on my Sovereign CEO channel. You can watch that video over there. I just, trying to satisfy the algorithm did not help, at least on YouTube. So I don't care anymore. I'm just going to upload content for Reels. This is not going to be a happy podcast. I'm warning you in advance. I like to give you positivity when I can, and today is not that day, unfortunately. I've changed my mind about something. And when you are objective and rational, you have to give yourself the ability to change your mind. If new information comes to light, if people make rational arguments, if situations change, you have to make your decisions and make your assessments based on the real world and based on the facts. I've been saying this for 15 years, not based on what you want to be true or what you hope is true. Several examples of the past. Years ago, I was pro-death penalty, hardcore. I'm like, fucking kill these people, yes. Several people made some very good, rational, objective, fact-based arguments, and I went, shit, that's a really good point, and I changed my mind. And now I am no longer pro-death penalty. I am against the death penalty. I don't want the government to have that kind of power to kill you. Government's too incompetent. Several years back, on one of my blogs, I posted a blog post, and I said, I am for even though I'm a libertarian or a minarchist libertarian, I am for the concept of patents. I think that is necessary, but I'm willing to change my mind if you guys in the comments provide quality, fact-based, rational arguments. I'm willing to change my mind on this. And I didn't expect anyone to change my mind. I expected a bunch of name calling, a bunch of stupid shit, which you usually get on the internet. However, several people in the comments made quality, objective, rational, intelligent, fact-based arguments, and I changed my mind. I said, you know what? You're right. I'm no longer for patents. I am for things like trademarks and other things like that, within reason, but patents, I'm against that now. My audience changed my mind because they produced new data that I wasn't aware of. So when you have this thing in your life where you just go forward and you never change your mind about anything, that's irrational. It is. So this is not a super strong opinion I have, but it is an opinion I had, and I've changed it. Before I get to what that is, I'm going to tell you a story. In the early 90s, I want to say this was 1992. I could be getting this year, the year off, plus or minus one or two, maybe 1993. I saw a change in the world, and I witnessed it. I was there and I witnessed it because I was an adult in the work world when this happened, and I saw it firsthand, and I couldn't believe it. Video games were invented in the late 1970s. Pong was the first video game, famously. And in the early 80s, when my parents could afford it, it was several years after it was invented, we got our first video game system. It was the Atari 2600. I got that in 1983, I think. My parents had a lot of money, so a lot of people had this before we did, and I played Space Invaders. It was the first video game I'd ever played, and it was like mind-blowing. Imagine never seeing you're a kid and you've never seen a video game before, and you see one for the first time, you're like, oh. And so I spent, like many people in my generation, Generation X, I spent many hours playing Space Invaders. And the other games later, like, Asteroids and Pac-Man and all those 80s games. They were great. They were great. I spent hours playing. It was amazing. So I've said this before, I have been playing video games since most of you watching my video content have been alive. That's how long I've been playing video games. Going back to the early 1980s. A lot of you weren't even born then, and that's when I was playing video games. And then in high school, I was playing Ultima. I remember playing Ultima 5 on my Commodore 64 in 1987. And it just blew me away. I still have fond memories about that. That was fucking 40 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever. Great stuff. And you had to ride your horse through the forest, and it was just bitmap graphics. Graphics were terrible by today's standards. And you go click, 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 and then it would stop and wait and have to load off the floppy disk. So you go click, 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 and then it would freeze, and you hear the floppy disk go, you wait, and then it would go back, and then it would unfreeze, click, 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 and then it would pause and freeze. And that was like the shit back then. That was awesome. We didn't have hard drives back then. They were invented, but nobody had them. You had to use floppy disks. And video games were great. They were awesome, but they were primitive. But they were still fun. Then something happened in 1993-ish, 2-ish. My first real job as a young man when I was 19, 20 years old, was working for a DOS software utilities company called Central Point Software in Beaverton, Oregon in the early 1990s. And I was the youngest employee in the entire company of 400 people. I was 19 years old. I've written blog articles about how I got that job, how hard it was for me to get that job, how to keep trying, and they had to pay attention to me, and I had no college degree, and I didn't really understand DOS, and I was very tenacious. Anyway, story from that time. And worked for this company, and we were all nerds. We were in the technical support department. This is before the Western world farmed out technical support to places like India. So this is right before that. Matter of fact, when I left that company, they had just been bought out by Symantec, and they had started to farm out their tech support to other companies in the US. And within a few years, they started farming out to India. That's what happens when you overregulate the business environment. You make it too expensive to hire people in your own country, so you have to hire people in foreign countries. And then everyone gets mad about, why are you shipping our jobs away? Because big government, dumb fuck. Stop voting for Democrats or Republicans, and this won't happen. But anyway, so we were all nerds playing video games. We all played video games, and there were the type of video games that you would play in the late 80s, early 90s. Then one day, a friend of mine, a guy named Paul, a friend of mine at the office, walked over and said, Caleb, I got to show you something. You're not going to fucking believe this. You got a minute? I got to show you something. Came over to my cubicle. I said, what? I'm not going to tell you what it is, Caleb. Just download this exe file. See, I'm using DOS terms. Download the zip, unload the exe, and run this game. It was a little DOS game. And just play it for a minute. Just play this game for a minute. I said, okay, what's it called? He goes, it's called Wolfenstein 3D. And I said, oh, Castle Wolfenstein. I used to play that in 1986 when I was in 7th grade on my Commodore 64. And that game was like, you were a little bitmap little man who didn't move with a little gun sticking out the side. It looked really stupid. He would click, 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 and you had to sneak through a castle to kill Hitler. And it was a cool game, but very primitive. So like, oh, it's a new version of Castle Wolfenstein. Well, that'd be cool. He's like, no. It's not a new version of Castle Wolfenstein. They're using the name. Just play this game. I said, okay. Download the game, ran the game, okay, installed it, ran, wolfenstein.exe, enter, DOS, and I saw the first-person shooter ever invented. Some of you know what this game is. I think you can play it now for free online. This is many years ago. And for the first time, I saw a first-person shooter, and I went, what the hell? You could walk through hallways with no delays, and it was smooth graphics. And you could shoot people, and it was as if you saw it through your own eyes. We had never seen anything like that before. It was revolutionary. It blew us away. We're like, what the fuck? I couldn't even believe what I was seeing on that screen. It was so amazing. What the hell? And they're like, yeah. And we were all blown away by this game. Wolfenstein 3D that is now, 30 years old. Now, it was a bitmapped game, so when you got up close to the enemies, they got real pixelated. And so the blood was cool from far away, but when you got up, it was bitmapped versus vector graphics. So when you got close to them, it looked all... But it was so fucking amazing, you didn't care. You didn't care about the flaws. It was amazing, and the world changed forever. Then we had Doom. Then we had games like, a lot of games. Okay, every first-person shooter game you can think of came from Wolfenstein 3D. The world changed. It was never the same again. It was never the same after that. Imagine a world with no first-person shooters or fantasy games, no Skyrim, no first-person perspective. Imagine that, because Castle Wolfenstein never came out. Now, here's what's interesting. Less than 10 years later, in the same decade, and again, I might be getting the year slightly off, by 1999, I believe, you had all these first-person shooters. You had, Doom, and you had Shadow Warrior, and you had the John Woo one, I forget, Rise of the Triad, and you had all these first-person shooter games, and eventually you had, Counter-Strike, and you had, all these games. By the end of that decade, but still in that decade, so within 10 years, you had another game, which I also played and thought was great, and I still to this day think it was one of the best games ever made. I just replayed it several years ago, called Morrowind. It's a fantasy game, first-person fantasy game. And this game was amazing because it was on one CD. Instead of on 14 CD, it was on one CD, and you loaded this game up, and it was amazing. You couldn't believe the graphics. Those of you old enough to play Morrowind the first time, you've never played, the very first, when it first came out, you're like, what the hell? These giant mushroom trees, and they look perfect. And you walk up to people, and they don't get pixelated. It was amazing. It was mind-blowing, and it was here's my point. It was light years beyond Castle Wolfenstein, which was just a few years ago. It wasn't like you had to wait 30 years to get an amazingly better first-person shooter. It was just a few years. There's no comparison between Morrowind and Castle Wolfenstein 3D. There's no comparison, but they're in the same decade. It's just 5, 6, 7 years later. That's how fast it changed. That's how fast the world changed, and that's how fast these massive improvements were made. So by Castle Wolfenstein was, 1993. By 1999, it sucked, quote unquote. It sucked. And it did. It did. It's quaint. It's cute today, right? But it sucks compared to anything you get today. That brings me to AI. Right now, as I record this podcast, you have AI-generated art, AI-generated stories, AI-generated podcast. There's a podcast called the Joe Rogan AI Experience. It's all AI. It's completely made up. So the voices are made up. The content, AI makes it all up. And you see ChatGPT and all these amazing things you can do with AI. And it's mind-blowing, isn't it? It's crazy. It's fucking crazy. And you're like, holy shit, this is crazy. I've been messing around with Midjourney lately. It's amazing. It's insane. It's great. But this amazing AI shit you're seeing now, this mind-blowing AI stuff you're seeing right now, is the Wolfenstein 3D. This is the shitty, horrible, stupid, awful version that in a few years we're going to say, well, that sucked. So in a few years, or less than a few years, AI is not only going to be better. It's not like it's going to be better. People say, well, it'll be better in a year. The next iteration will be better. No, it's not going to be better. No. It's going to be an entire level of difference, a universe of difference. It's going to be the difference between Wolfenstein 3D and Morrowind. And it probably won't even take 6 or 7 years. It'll probably be 1 or 2 or 3 years. Okay? So as amazing or as scary, because it's both, scary and amazing, the AI stuff you're seeing right now this is the crappy Windows 3.1 bitmapped, pixelated, crappy DOS version. This amazing shit that we're seeing now. Because I've already been through this several times. I'm an old man. Been around the block. I've seen these revolutions occur. So I know it's coming. When AI gets light years universes better than it is now in just a few fucking years, we're not ready for this. Human beings aren't ready. So here's another topic that's interrelated to this. We're in the middle of a collapsing Western civilization. Human beings, modern day human beings at least, are the dumbest they've ever been right now. This is pre-AI, and this is irrelevant to AI. I'll come back to this in a second. These two topics tie together. We live in an era now where millions upon millions of Americans voted for Donald Trump because they really thought he would build a wall and make America great again. That's how dumb people are today. Millions more Americans, and Westerners, I should say, really think that a woman is a man who got breast implants and calls himself a woman. That's a woman. If you say it's not a woman, you're a horrible person. They really think this stuff. Okay? You've got people who think that, when Putin started killing thousands of civilians, innocent civilians in Ukraine, thousands, if not millions of people on the internet said, well, yeah, he had to do that. Well, yeah, of course he had to do that. It's a good idea. It's a good idea. He had to do that. Okay? So this is the level of humanity we're having right now. Okay. And now we're going to have, in short order, in just a few years, AI that is not better than now. Its universe is better than now. With a populace that's stupid and irrational, I think we're in big trouble. I just do. Now, this is a change in my opinion. I thought AI would help us, and I think it will still. I have already benefited from AI. Many of you are benefiting. I've talked to a lot of guys in our coaching programs. There's a lot of cool shit with AI, making money with AI, really cool applications. So I think it's going to really help a lot of people. But long term, and when I say long term in this scenario, I'm talking about like, long term as in, 1, 2, 3 years. Had to pause the podcast for a second. It was getting a little hot. When you have a scenario where in just a few years, AI can do everything. It can write software. Right now it can write code. It can write software. It can make movies. It can write novels. It can publish online courses. It can do anything. Do anything. We're not ready. Now, I'm not talking about AI taking over the world and killing everybody. I'll address that in a little bit. So I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about when you have this technology that can do everything, we're not ready for that level of change that quickly, especially today when people, modern day Westerners, are collapsing civilizations all over the world, and they are the most irrational and the stupidest they've ever been. You add those two things together. There have been many stories throughout history. Not many stories, but in the last 100 years or so, there have been science fiction authors writing books about how dumb people are getting. Even back in the 50s, a famous book, I forget the name, where a guy, it's like Buck Rogers, he falls asleep and he wakes up thousands of years later and everybody's stupid. And it's like literally like Idiocracy, but it's serious. And he's kind of smart, so he becomes like this emperor. And he like convinces him to take a rocket and shoot off into space and fly into the sun. And there's been all kinds of stories about this, where when you have that many stupid people, the few people who are smart have undue levels of power and authority. What happens when that is AI? With typical people who think, who are arguing right now about what is a woman, which, by the way, is another signal of civilizational collapse. When you're arguing about gender and gender becomes a really big deal, you look at other civilizations collapse, that's what happens. It's yet another sign. When you have millions of people hoping that Trump will be president again so he can be president again for 4 years and do nothing he promised again. When you have this level of irrationality on top of the AI, I think we're in big trouble. I hate saying that, but I do. And I used to think that we probably wouldn't be in trouble. I thought we'd be okay and we'd be benefited and this would be a change that we would adjust to, just like when cars were invented, we stopped using horses. I don't think I have that opinion anymore. All of the data that I have been seeing, all the experts I have seen talk about this, like I said, have been making really good points that are not hysterical. I saw one guy say the other day that imagine if you had the Neanderthal and the Neanderthal created Homo sapiens. And they said, let's create Homo sapiens and they'll make our lives better. They'll help us clean our caves and help us make our food. And it'll make our caves more pretty and it'll be awesome. And then they start doing that. And so you have Homo sapiens who are a lot smarter and a lot, far beyond Neanderthals. And you have a few of the elders of the Neanderthals saying, guys, I don't think this is a good idea. And everyone calls them, oh, you Luddite, you dumbass. It's fine. They're not going to hurt us. Look how cool our caves look now. Isn't that great? And look at their babies. Aren't their babies cute? Aren't they fun to play with? And the baby is ChatGPT 4 right now. It's fun. Yeah, not a good idea. I had someone who was talking about AI experts talking about in AI circles for many years now, prior to all this. They said there's two things you don't want to do with AI. Number one, you don't want it to give access to the internet. Don't do that. Oops, we did that. And number two was don't teach it how to code. Oops, we did that. So we're doing everything that the people who are experts in this have been warning about. Now, I have said many times, this is why I'm not 100% on this. I've said many times, experts are often wrong. That's what these Peter Zeihan worshipers don't understand. We just went through a pandemic where all the experts were completely wrong across the board. But here's the thing. It's not that all the experts are saying this, that some of them are saying this, and a lot of experts saying it'll just be fine. And it might be fine. By the way, I am not making a prediction here. I'm not an AI expert. I don't have this kind of information or expertise or data. So I'm not making a prediction. This is a guess on my part. There's be predictions and guesses. Here's a prediction. The United States will collapse in our lifetime. That's a prediction. It'll happen. I'll be right. I don't know when, but it will. My guess is that in the next few years, we're going to be disrupted in a way that the human race is not, especially the modern version of the human race, the dumbest it's ever been, the most irrational it's ever been, in modern history at least, is not ready for. My guess is there's going to be some real problems that we're not going to be able to solve, that we don't know how to solve. Even now, and I've said this several times before in the last few months, I'll say it again. If I was an attorney right now, I'd be really fucking nervous. I'd be really worried to be an attorney right now. If you're an attorney and that's your only source of income, I'd be really worried. You won't need attorneys very soon. Very quickly, you won't need attorneys. I think it was Scott Adams who said, in the next few years, the only thing attorneys will be doing will be suing AI. People will say, hey, that's my copyright material, and they hire an attorney to sue AI. If you're a journalist, and that's all you know how to do, and that's your only source of income is being a journalist, reporting the news, boy, are you fucked. You're not going to need journalists very soon. Attorneys will be out of business, except for the AI suing ones. Journalists will be out of business. If you're a copywriter, not a marketing expert, you can be a marketing consultant, things like that, offer marketing services, that's still good. But if you're a copywriter and all you know how to do is write copy, that's all you know how to do, that's your single skill at which you make money, you're in big trouble. You're fucked. You need to course correct right the fuck now, I think, in my opinion. We could go on and on. There's right now, as I record this podcast, there's a writer's strike in Hollywood. And they're saying, you better not let AI write stories. And I agree with the concept. I agree with their point. But that's like saying, the horse and buggy people back in the early 1900s saying, oh, you better not use this car thing. You better not use, the company I work for, let's go on strike because we don't want them to use any cars. Well, how long is that going to last? You could probably delay it a few years. Eventually, it's going to take over. People are going to start using cars. People are going to start using AI to write their movies. That's the good thing, by the way. There's a lot of good stuff in there, too. I've been one of the many people, I stopped complaining about this several years ago because it was useless, but prior to about 2017, I was complaining over and over again on my blogs about how horrible pop culture has become, how horrible movies are now, how horrible TV shows, oh my God, they're just awful. I just can't believe how bad they are. It's like they're bad on purpose. And how, they're not, there's a new Indiana Jones movie coming out soon. I'm not going to see it. It looks terrible. It's awful. They're destroying the franchises that I grew up with as a kid. They've destroyed every franchise. I've been through the list. They've destroyed Indiana Jones. They've destroyed Star Wars. They've destroyed Star Trek. They've destroyed Doctor Who. They've destroyed Predator. They've destroyed Terminator. They've destroyed James Bond. Everything I grew up with, they destroyed Lord of the Rings. Everything I've grown up with, they've destroyed. So my point is that, what was my point? I lost my point. Shit. This is Raw Podcast again. The good thing about AI is that you will be able to soon go to whatever version of ChatGPT we'll be using in a few years and say, play me a movie, play me an Indiana Jones movie, an original Indiana Jones movie in the style of early 1980s Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, starring Harrison Ford, who is 40 years old, but you could give some parameters and go, and you'll be able to watch a movie that will probably be good. Unless ChatGPT or the future version of this gets woke, which is also possible. That's extremely possible. So assuming it's not woke, you could say the non-woke, non-left-wing, give me the 1982 version, not the modern-day woke version. And most likely, you'll be able to watch a movie that looks completely real that might be really good. So that's cool. There's some good parts to this. And I'm going to make a lot of money on some of this AI stuff, at least the short term. Okay? So I'm not saying this is all bad. I'm saying that what is coming, the human race isn't ready for this. I'm also saying I could be wrong. Maybe this won't happen. Maybe we'll be okay. Maybe it'll be a painful transitional period, and then we'll adjust like human beings always do, and it'll be fine. That could happen. Something else. I have said before, I've been on record as saying this for many years, the United States / the Western world will collapse in our lifetimes. The only thing that will avert that collapse is someone invents something that changes the human condition and makes that irrelevant. I've been on the record as saying that. That could happen. I've been saying that for more than 10 years. I'm not going to bet my life on that. I'm not going to sit in collapsing USA or cuckoo Canada or suicidal Europe or authoritarian Australia and just hope that someone invents something that saves my life. I'm not a passive beta like that. I'm not going to do that. So I'm not going to assume that happens. I'm going to bet my life on that shit. But it's possible it could happen. And so what is possible now is that thing that quote unquote saves the Western world is AI. However, what will it save it? What will that saved Western civilization look like post super AI? It will replace it with something else that I don't think I'll like, and you may not like. So it could be one of these scenarios where the cure is worse than the disease. Yes, it may technically save the United States, and the United States won't go under because AI will run everything, or if not run everything, provide everything people need. But it will not be a United States that you recognize. It'll be nothing like the United States now. I go back to the movie WALL-E. And so the concept of that movie toward the end is human beings have completely invented automation. Everything's automated. So all human beings are fat and they sit in chairs. The chairs just float around and all they do is sit and eat and watch stuff all day. And that's all they do because they're all fat. All human beings are like this. It's the norm now. Something like that. Not necessarily that you're physically fat, but that you have human beings in the future. And when I say the future, I'm talking just a few years from now. Again, Wolfenstein to Morrowind was just 6-7 years. Just a few years from now, people are just, you think they're staring at screens now? You think people are addicted to staring at screens now? You think men are beta now? You think men have low testosterone now? You think, millennials and Gen Z are lazy now? Can you imagine the next generation after Gen Z, the children of Gen Z in this world, or even Gen Z? When Gen Z gets into their 30s, what the world's going to, and the millennials get into their 40s, start taking over the world? With all this AI stuff coming down, I don't think we're ready for this. I think a small percentage of humanity is ready, and I think the other 95% is not ready at all. And unfortunately, as we've seen time and time again, it's that damn 95% that fuck everything up, right? That was the pandemic again, right? 95% of planet Earth completely lost their minds when a flu with a 1% death rate went around the world really quick. 1%, and everyone 95% of countries, companies, humans lost their fucking minds, right? We're not ready for this. I don't think we're ready. And I think bad shit's coming. I don't know. I'm not making a prediction. This is not like the United States is going to collapse. I'm right about that. It'll collapse. That's a prediction that's going to happen. I'm talking about, I think the odds are decent that in the next few years, we're going to see economic and cultural disruptions that human beings won't have a solution for. Possibly. I could be wrong. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about Terminator 2, The Matrix. I'm not talking about Skynet takes over the world and kills everybody. That's a completely separate and additional topic from what I'm talking about now. I'm not talking about that yet. I'm talking about just in a few years when AI does everything. It won't kill us, but it will transform the human condition in ways that we're not ready for. We could have a complete separate discussion about will AI eventually kill us? That's possible, and I've said on my blogs for years, I put those odds at around 30%. So those are decent odds that the human race will be wiped out by AI or the equivalent. Here are the scenarios I've given on that really quick. The scenarios I envision, we have 1 of 3 scenarios for that, but that's going to take longer than 6 years. What I'm talking about here is coming really soon. The destruction of the human race, if that happens, that's down the road, but it's 1 of 3 options. Option 1 is Ray Kurzweil, we merge with the machine, and the machine doesn't differentiate between us and them. We're just another type of machine. We have cybernetic parts that we plug into the matrix, and okay, so that's option 1. I would go for that. That'd be fine, I think. Option 2, the AI kills us all. It just says, okay, you're in the way. Bye. Option 3 is that AI treats us the way we treat animals. So do we go and murder all the apes in Africa? No, we don't do that. We try to be nice about it. Some people do. Some people hunt those creatures. And so there's a small percentage of humans who are bad to animals. But most people, what we do is, here's what we do. Do we leave the apes alone? No, we don't leave them alone either. What we do, and this is what AI will do to us. AI will come and say, yeah, I need this neighborhood. So I'll just pick you humans up and put you over in a domed city and just shove you in the city and feed you and give you Netflix, and we'll just make you fat, and they'll just move us aside, and then they'll run the earth and do what they want. So we'll be like their pets. We'll be in glorified zoos. That's possible. If the AI is superior to us and they know, but they have compassion for us, the way we have compassion for animals, they could treat us like that. I think it's one of those 3 scenarios. Which one will happen? I don't know. But I'm not concerned about that now. What I'm concerned about is what I think is going to happen the next few years when ChatGPT version 4, 5, 6, 7 or whatever, it'll be called something else, right? We don't still use MySpace, we use Facebook. And actually most people now use more Twitter and Instagram, right? So it'll be some other iteration of some other name when that happens. I don't think we're ready. And I think we're in for some real problems as a species. Caleb, what's the solution? How can I protect myself? I don't know, but I know who will be better off. It's the standard thing I've been saying. If you have more money, you'll be more protected than if you have no money. If you have 5 flags, if you have international options, you're internationally mobile, you'll be much more protected than people who don't have any international options. They have 1 passport or 1 residency in 1 city, and all their income is located in that 1 city, and they're fucked if something happens in that city. So I know you'll be much safer. People who are men who are open to non-monogamy are going to be a lot happier, or at least less unhappy than men who are locked into a monogamous model. I can only have sex with 1 woman because that's what the Bible says. And if I cheat, if I fuck someone else, she'll get mad at me and break up with me. Okay, those guys are fucked. So I do know that everything I teach improves your odds of success in any environment, including this one. I'm a lot better arrayed to survive and perhaps thrive with what's coming in the next few years than the vast majority of you listening to this podcast. Some of you are Alpha Male 2.0. You've got your location-independent businesses. You're non-monogamous. You're not tethered to any one region. You're covered. Now, but even we could be in trouble to some degree. But even if we are, we're going to be in less trouble. This may not save you. I don't know what's going to happen. But you'll be much less worse off. I'll wrap up with this. I've said this many times. We live in an era of least bad, not good. When people ask me, Caleb, what's the best way to raise kids today in the modern era? And guess what the answer is? There is none. There's no good way to raise children in the Western world today. As soon as they get a phone, I'm not going to ever give them a phone. Yes, you are. You're lying. You will. You'll give them a phone eventually because your wife will scream at you. You'll give them a phone, and when you give them a phone, if you don't give them a phone, they'll use their friends' phones. When they go to their friends' house, they'll use their phones. And see on that? Okay, you're fucked. So there are least bad ways of raising kids. There are. I thank goodness that. So when I raised my kids in the 90s, that was hard. Pre-cell phones, more or less pre-internet, kind of. Internet was just coming onto the fore when my kids were little. That was hard. And fortunately, my 2 kids turned out pretty well, but it was hard. Their mother and I had to work hard to raise those kids in that environment. Today, so that's an example. So we're talking in a scenario here about least bad. How do you settle down with a woman and stay with her the rest of your life? You probably can't. There's just least bad scenarios, OLTR marriage. There are least bad ways you can do this. So in order to be least bad, in terms of what may or may not be coming in the next few years with this AI stuff, Alpha Male 2.0, 5 flags. Location-independent income, 5 flags. Non-monogamy, outcome independence, physical health, okay? Exercising, all those things I talk about. You'll be much less bad off, even if it does affect everybody. It could affect everybody. I could be affected by it. Don't know. I just know I'll be better off because I follow the models I teach. Wish I had better news. And again, I'm going to say this one more time. I'm not predicting this. This is a guess on my part. I think it might happen. I could be totally wrong. I don't know. It might just be fine. Or it might be a disruption and then we'll be okay. I don't know. I'm just saying, Caleb said we're all fucked in 2 or 3 years. No, I'm saying that's my guess. Based on everything I'm seeing, all the experts, all the data, it doesn't look good. Based on how human beings are today, you add all these factors together, all these variables, this does not look good. And I'm not talking about something that'll happen 30 years down the road, because some guys will say, well, yeah, the United States will collapse, but it'll be 25 years. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about something that's going to happen in the next few years because I've seen these revolutions occur before. Cool? Cool. I'll try to be more upbeat in the next podcast. But I will see you in the next podcast. Have fun.